In Southeast Asia, Malaysia has always been seen as a nation with potential, economic potential, political potential, and yes, military potential. But in recent years, a troubling question has emerged from defense analysts, from foreign observers, and even from within its own borders. Why is the Malaysian military perceived as weak? It is a harsh question, but a fair one. And to answer it, we cannot simply look at the number of soldiers or the age of the equipment. We have to look at the system itself. We have to look at the money, the mismanagement, and the slow erosion of an institution that was once respected. This is the story of how a military lost its way, and whether it can ever find its way back. To understand the present, we have to start with the rot at the core: corruption. In recent years, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, or ACC, has uncovered something deeply unsettling. Beneath the surface of official parades and defense contracts, organized bribery networks were operating. These were not small-scale operations. High-ranking officials were implicated. Millions of ringgit were seized. The image presented to the public of a professional, disciplined force began to crack. What the investigations revealed was a culture of procurement designed not for national security, but for personal gain. Contracts were awarded based on connections, not capability. Deals were structured to benefit middlemen, not the troops. And when the Prime Minister himself, Anwar Ibrahim, stood up and admitted that funds had been wasted on flawed, politically influenced deals, the message was clear: the system was broken from the top down. Now, corruption is not just about missing money. It has consequences. And the first consequence is the equipment. Let us talk about the hardware. The Royal Malaysian Air Force operates aircraft that are, by any modern standard, obsolete. The Royal Malaysian Navy still relies on vessels that were built in the 1970s. These are ships that have been sailing for nearly 50 years. 50 years. Meanwhile, billions of ringgit have been spent on defense. So where did the money go? It went into the pockets of the corrupt. It went into projects that looked good on paper, but delivered nothing in the field. This is not speculation. This is documented waste. And the result is that Malaysian servicemen and women are being asked to do their jobs with equipment that should have been retired decades ago. But it gets worse. Because the equipment is not just old, it is dangerous. In a rare and stark warning, the King of Malaysia described some of the Air Force's aircraft as, and I quote, flying coffins. Think about the weight of that phrase. The head of state, the symbol of the nation, stood up and said that the men and women serving in the Air Force are being sent into the sky in machines that could kill them. That is not a perception. That is a fact. When the king has to call out the military for putting lives at risk, you know the problem has reached the highest level. It is a national shame. And then came the domino effect. When the scandals finally broke, when the investigations began to yield results, the government had to act. They froze nearly 2 billion ringgit in operational funds. On the surface, this makes sense. If the system is leaking money, you stop the leak. But here is the reality of a funding freeze. It does not just stop corruption. It stops everything. It stops maintenance. It stops training. It stops fuel. It stops spare parts. So now, not only is the military operating obsolete and dangerous equipment, but even the equipment that still works is struggling to stay operational. The freeze was intended to clean house. Instead, it created a new crisis, a crisis of readiness. If Malaysia needed to respond to a threat tomorrow, the honest answer is that the military would struggle. Not because the soldiers lack courage, but because the system has failed them at every level. But here is where the story takes a strange turn. Because despite all of this, the military has a plan, it has a vision, and it is actually quite ambitious. If you look at the official procurement plans, Malaysia is trying to acquire some very advanced hardware. They are looking for stealth fighter jets, fifth-generation aircraft like the Korean KF-21 with a target date of 2040. They acknowledge a critical gap in air defense, meaning they currently cannot effectively shoot down drones or incoming missiles, and they plan to acquire 2 batteries of medium-range systems. They want attack helicopters, though a recent deal for Black Hawks was cancelled, leaving them searching once more. The Navy is finally set to receive new littoral combat ships. replacing the relics of the 1970s. The Air Force is acquiring Turkish Anka drones, while simultaneously trying to develop their own loitering munitions, or what some call kamikaze drones. And on the industrial side, there is a new policy demanding that local firms handle repairs, because right now, Malaysia lacks the domestic capability to even maintain its own equipment. So the ambition is there. The shopping list is impressive. The problem is the gap between the dream and the reality. Let me put this in perspective. At the same time that the military is planning for stealth jets in 2040, it is struggling to keep its current aircraft flying today. At the same time that it is talking about drone swarms and modern naval fleets, it has frozen billions in operational funding. It is like trying to build a mansion while the foundation of your current house is crumbling. This is the paradox of the Malaysian military. It is an institution looking decades into the future, while being paralyzed in the present. And in the meantime, the threats are not waiting. Regional neighbors are modernizing. Drone technology is advancing. Missile technology is spreading. And Malaysia is sitting here with a procurement system still under investigation and a funding freeze still in place. So where does that leave us? What is the verdict? The new leadership has promised a total cleanup. They have vowed stricter oversight and a commitment to reform. And there is no doubt that there are good people within the military, honest officers and enlisted men who want to serve their country and want to be proud of their service. But fixing decades of entrenched corruption is not a quick job. It is not a matter of one investigation or one speech. It requires sustained political will. It requires a culture shift. And most of all, it requires that the money actually reaches the people who need it. The king called some of the aircraft flying coffins. That phrase must become a relic of the past. It must become a warning that we heeded, not a description that remains true, because at the end of the day, a nation that cannot protect its own defenders is a nation that is not ready to defend itself. The Malaysian military has a long road ahead. The plans are on paper, the ambition is real. But until the corruption is gone, until the budget is spent wisely, and until every soldier, sailor, and airman can do their job without fear that their equipment will fail them, the perception of weakness will remain. And in defense, perception is often reality.